All right, so last and final session, right? You guys made it through. You can almost kick your heels up here. I want to make sure I don't hit him. So for those of you guys that have not seen me yet, my name's Kendall Spencer. I'm on the board for EIF. I am an attorney. I specialize in a montage of privacy, cybersecurity, what we call technology transactions. So that's a lot of contracting, software licensing agreements, that sort of thing. And also mergers and acquisitions. I help a lot of emerging companies start and scale their companies and expand into a variety of other endeavors. So this last session is crafted very intentionally. I very intentionally do not come up here with slides, with per se talking points, because this is a lot less about me and way more about you all. For the past couple of days, you guys have heard lectures from incredibly experienced experts, ranging from individuals in government to individuals who are poll workers, people working for the state, people working in a variety of categories within this sort of election and voting ecosystem that we like to use to uphold our democracy. What I like to do for this last session is facilitate a bit more of a discussion with you all, because we can talk at you all week, all day, and we love to do that. Trust me, a lot of us are academics. We are quite literally used to it. But it doesn't mean a whole lot if we're not able to have ourselves and you all be able to take what you're hearing today and actually leave the room with, whether it's an action plan, but actual work to do, and understand kind of, well, really this question of, well, what's next? What are we supposed to do? So I very purposely titled this last session, The Republic is a Team Sport. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, when we talk about the Republic, when we talk about our democratic system, it's a team sport in that all of us who are, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're involved in policy, whether you're just an individual that votes, you are a part of this broad fabric that holds up the system that we hold near and dear to each other. And so one of the things that we want to do, if you guys were here for the 11:30 session when we were talking about election denialism and answering this question of have we as researchers made it worse, we want to start addressing this concept of how do we talk about this, right? Not just me talking to you, but you talking amongst yourselves. We want to talk a little bit about not so much the partisan issues of democracy, but really, what does it mean to be here in this country? What does it mean to protect these systems and uphold these values? And really, what is it we're supposed to do next? A little bit of background. I like to use the team sport dynamic as a concept because I'm a former professional athlete. I ran track for a number of years, and it's just a really easy analogy for people to kind of sink their teeth into. And so how I kind of like to structure this, the way that it started was I was in law school when George Bush Sr. passed away. Now, I'm from the West Coast. We, admittedly grew up incredibly democratic, very liberal. But when George Bush Sr. passed away, I was surprisingly distraught, actually. And the reason for it was sort of shocking, because at the time I was at Georgetown Law, Donald Trump's in office. Again, this is not a partisan type of conversation, but just give you guys a little background. Donald Trump's in office. I'm in law school with his daughter, Tiffany Trump. We've got classes. We're cordial. We're doing that whole thing. And it had dawned on me that for the majority of my life, whether you were a Democrat or a Republican or a Green Party or whatsoever, it didn't really impact me that much. Where I had grown up, you had a preference, but you weren't necessarily fearing for your life. You had a preference, but you weren't necessarily worried about so far the welfare of your community or your colleagues or the future, because at the end of the day, everyone wanted the same thing, in the sense of we all at some point believed that we all had a place here in this country, right? We all had a role to play. The difference was, between the parties, there was just a different idea of how to get there. Somewhere along the way, we seem to have lost that. And when I say that, what I mean is we seem to have lost our ability to communicate across the aisle and to have meaningful disagreements. You don't have to believe what I believe. I, quite frankly, don't really care, right? But I do care about learning. It's not about me being right. It's not necessarily about you being right. It's really more about being exposed to a wide variety of ideas that challenge some of the earlier constructs that we might be holding on to that maybe aren't true or maybe over time shift. And so what I want to do, I've got another mic for a reason. I want you all to sort of talk to me. I want you guys to talk amongst yourselves, and we'll start with a very, very simple question of, just, that always terrifies me, honestly. I don't like this one. It's been happening like all day. And I'm gonna pause for a second and tell you the last time that I gave this facilitated this conversation, I started with a really tough question which was, what does it mean to be an American today, right? And we can get to some of that. So what I want to start with, and maybe we can have, I don't know if this mic will reach, it probably won't, but we can have people come up. Tell me something you learned this week. What are a couple things that you all heard during the lectures, during the presentations, or even broadly at DEF CON that challenged some of the ways that you guys were thinking? Hands raised. Any general thoughts? Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if this will reach. We're gonna try it. It will not. Yeah. Why don't you come up here?
In one of the policy talks, it was supposed to be it was a Senate committee hearing that they're doing a replication of. And then one of the Republican guys, or he was acting as a Republican guy, brought up a good point of how people intentionally go for the baited questions and the short clips and the TikTok clips, not of pure ignorance or they don't know what necessarily they're talking about, but because it's easier to convey to the public their actual opinions if you get it in a TikTok clip versus a long drawn out explanation of what they actually want. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Any reactions? Anyone have a similar discovery? Yeah. Any thoughts? If we can also try talking from the seats too. But in the event that people cannot hear, we can use mics. We'll figure it out.
It's a similar thing for me. I've seen stuff for the TikTok posts, but I'm a little bit more cynical as time has gone on looking at things. Where I see the TikTok clip and I'm like, is this about communicating to your electorate, or is this about getting some signaling more numbers in order to just get elected again? It seems to me that a lot of what I've seen in elections have gone to short-sightedness and going to the next election and kind of maximizing that target as a goal rather than having that be a byproduct of appealing to the base.
So we're talking a little bit about how we communicate about elections and about how we reach different demographics and the overall communities we're trying to hit. Did you have something?
Yeah. So back in the day, it seems like CNN showed up and your news was one sentence running across the bottom of the screen. And the TikTok seems to become, you're looking for your soundbite that makes you feel good about everything, which you're out of board. It's not news.
Right.
Is that?
Which is interesting. So I'm assuming everyone here knows what TikTok is, right? Vaguely. It's not meant to be an insult. It's just a gut check. Let's make sure. We've moved towards a lot more sound bites, right? And you have a great point. It's not maybe meant to be news, but perhaps part of the problem is a lot of individuals see that as, well, this is what it's all about, and the sort of buck stops with the one-liner, and people aren't going a bit further. Asked differently, what would you like to see change with that? Like what does that look like for you? Yeah.
I honestly go watch news sources that appall me.
Okay, the shock factor. Okay.
Well, just to know what they're thinking and what's going on, but I still don't grab the shorter sound. I look for the whole news story. I don't know how to get other people to go. I mean, go to kill 30 minutes of your day and go watch something you can't stand.
Yeah.
But at least you know it's being said, even if you disagree with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of, and I'll hit this point really quick, and then we'll move to you. Part of why what you said is interesting to me is one of the questions that I had asked previously was around this question of what it means to be an American. Was the background for it was, have we made it too hard to uphold democracy, in the sense of, are we so inundated with the day-to-day of just getting by, going to work, taking care of our families, seeing friends, that all of a sudden this concept of, or this weight really, of taking 30 minutes or an hour and looking into what we're hearing has now become despite all the resources in the world, all the access to news, has become this insane task that no one has time for, or said differently, maybe no one makes time for. And that's not meant to be a criticism. We all have jobs. We all have things that weigh on us, of course. But maybe that's where we are. And I haven't personally quite figured out how we get around that, because priorities matter, you know, and part of individuality is being able to choose how you prioritize your life and what you give attention to, right? Yeah.
I wasn't really gonna,
Yeah,
but I wanted to reflect something that I thought that she was saying that I felt like we didn't focus on enough, which was that, and you say it wrong, but that when we were watching CNN on TV and you had the little like ticker across the bottom, it wasn't pre-selected differently for this viewer versus that viewer.
This is true.
And this is a key difference in the way that most Americans are getting their information now, which is that what I am seeing in my TikTok is different than what you are seeing in your TikTok, right?
The algorithm chooses what you see, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's very difficult to escape the bubble of your previously expressed preferences. It's very difficult to like get perspective and, you know, like have a broader point of view.
Right. Especially when
And to have like a clear sight of what people who think differently than you might be seeing and thinking.
Yeah.
CNN didn't have an algorithm like something you can hear.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't
TikTok
tuning in
shows
so
that.
fast.
Right, and sometimes it's not even a matter of what you've pre-selected. It's what you've spent. You know, hey, I spent 5 seconds looking at this thing, and then I moved on to something else, which I maybe spent like half a second, and so on and so forth. Yeah, exactly. But that's how the algorithm is kind of wired. Yeah, absolutely. Gentleman right there.
And again, this is like taking a step back a little bit.
Yeah, please.
From the experience, when the first gentleman first mentioned TikTok up there, I think that's the other big thing is that everything is so amplified now. The volume is turned up so loud, and the onslaught is almost, you know, overwhelming. Like it comes in from everywhere. Are we in the process of learning and developing ourselves as I'm going to say, as human beings a little bit too, certainly as Americans in some way, to this new medium, this new consciousness of existence like that? Maybe it's going to take a little time for all of this to adjust a little bit. And I don't know, it's just interesting to me that to think about, for example, and maybe this is not a great correlation, like parents today, my guys, my oldest turned 39 the other day. I got a 40-year-old kid. I remember this kid when he was this big, like, you know. And parents today, my kids didn't grow up with cell phones, yet parents today have to grow up with cell phones. And these kids, what they put up with, you know, I feel so bad for young teenagers and, you know, neighbors, kids, and all that stuff. You know, I mean, what a beautiful tool at the same time. What a weight, what an obligation to have that torment. He was talking about one of his daughters, my neighbor, my buddy, about, you know, in the old days, you know, you leave it in school. Now, fortunately, 24 hours a day. So I'm just kind of thinking, the majority of his comments here, is it a matter of us evolving a little bit to how to know how to handle this and hopefully handle it in a better way? Or right now, maybe we're going through some of the growing pains and some of the tantrum, I don't mean to do emotion, where someday maybe we'll learn how to behave better. And just looking at Schneier brought up about AI being, you know, AI is so powerful and stuff. It's almost like you have to learn how to modify AI not to be so, you know, explosive and different.
Yeah, there's a lot to what you said there that makes me think about part of the weight as Americans right now, and honestly, this is also a global issue too. Like, let's be honest, we're constantly readjusting, and we don't really get that. I sort of analogize it to being on vacation, right? You know, you leave your country, you know, you leave your state, maybe you leave your city, and you go away to somewhere different where you don't have as much commotion. Maybe your friends aren't near you. You know, you're able to kind of separate yourself from the day-to-day. But with your point about technology, we're not really able to do that, or at least it's incredibly difficult. And if you're a teenager, oh my God, I could not imagine being a teenager these days. You gentlemen, yeah.
I was going to say, you asked a question earlier that was, what should we do about it?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think about a lot is that we talk about, especially in this country, a lot of capitalism. We like it, or maybe we like it, maybe we don't. But think about it as like an amoral engine that's going to push us towards something. Right now, it's pushing us towards the thing that hooks people and gets them to spend money and watch things, right? And that is completely divorced from what's actually good for us, what's actually good for our democracy. And so we can find a way to motivate goodness through even through money, through capital. Right? And you can say that the way that you make more money in a media empire or whatever is by presenting better news than someone else. Then we get to apply the engine that is capitalism towards something that's good instead of applying it right now towards making money for people at our own destruction.
Yeah, here's just a lot of what you say resonates with me, but here's the first thing that what you said makes me think about. It's an incentives problem. But the problem with that is we've somehow come to a point where, again, referencing the panel we had at 11:30, we're having a lot of difficulty around being able to agree around a handful of concepts and facts. And the reason why I'm connecting that to what you're saying is, how do we get to this incentive solution if we can't agree on what it means to be good? If we don't have, just to talk a little bit more loosely about it, if we can't agree on whether it be a moral or ethical code or anything like that, how do we get there, right? That becomes incredibly difficult. And while I wasn't around for the 1800s and so on and so forth, I from what I've read, and I didn't go into this earlier, but when I'm not lawyering, when I'm not doing tech stuff with elections and EIF, I'm a rare book dealer and collector, so that's a whole other thing. Fascinating stuff if you ever really want to see me nerd out. But I say all that to say there were times in history where at least there was a lot more agreement around just what we valued, what was meant to be prioritized, what was meant to be protected. And somehow finances, the economics of everything blurred those lines. Now even the way we promote ideas to children has gotten a little bit more flexible, right? There was a time where, hey, having a phone before the age of 14 was like kind of crazy, right? Now it's like if you're in elementary school and if you can dial a number, you're getting a phone. But let's move on. Yeah.
Well, not really moving on, but I wanted to say, when people say, what can we do about it? Basically, it's propaganda, whatever side thing it's doing, because it's trying to get you into a thought, right? Everybody here is the influencer in their own world. So studies show that friends and family trust you more than they trust what the algorithm brings up. But most people, it's a lot, they're overwhelmed, they want to step back, whatever. So if you want to affect your world, then you share those facts, those truths, those values on what you share on social, and then that reinforces it with people in your community and the people you talk to.
Super helpful. So let me switch gears a little bit here, and this is going to be super annoying because we're going to start this conversation and we're going to run out of time. So bringing this back to this broader concept of democracy and our elections, let's talk about what's broken and how to fix it, right? The first thing maybe we can get to is, again, this concept of communication. We've talked a lot about vulnerabilities. We talked a little bit about how to protect those and how to deliver the information, but somehow we still end up hitting our heads against the wall when it comes to being responsible around vulnerabilities that are discovered, how to share those, and how to have that not weaponized against the public in a way that destroys public confidence. But we still want to be factual, and we still want to move the needle forward. So what I want to ask you all is, from your perspectives, what are some areas that could, I'm not going to be politically correct and say could use some improving. What's broken in our system right now?
Like I would say in general, to Matt Blaze's point, in his very first introduction, in the voting military, he talked about, look, there are multiple attack surfaces. It's not just about voting ID and hacking. But he made a great point. It's really about transparency. So the more transparent you can be with the systems and the election processes, whatever political party you're from, you can say, okay, that whatever it is, that was recorded. There's a paper trail. You've got the more radical transparency you can get in those election processes and procedures, you're going to solve the problem because the more confidence you're going to get. So I don't view it as a weaponization of, like, going back to what I said before, but there's just a fundamental ideological shift in thinking about it. It's like you have to address the mistrust with more transparency, you know, whatever that looks like. And it's not just one, to Matt Blaze's point, it's not just one area, right? It's not just voter ID, the machines. It's like you have multiple attack surfaces, multiple vulnerabilities. Let's focus on putting resources and money in plugging those vulnerabilities up, and then you're going to get more confidence, and then you're going to see naturally people are going to, you know, the temperature is going to come down a little bit with the accusations. Oh, I don't trust that result that happened, you know.
So I said this before, that I just don't understand what the problem is with voter ID. You have to do everything. And in fact, they actually upscaled and become like they scan our license plate to make sure that we are Nevada residents to get free parking.
Like I think there
They're scanning our
Microphone.
See, thank you. See, there we go. I knew at some point it was going to be like.
I said before that I think voter ID would help at least one party feel more comfortable about who's voting. And we have to use ID for almost everything. Like, I can't think of anything where you don't use your ID to accomplish, to travel, to book a hotel room, to drive your car. Like, everything requires ID. And even now they're talking about free groceries in New York City, where someone's going to have to show ID. If not, it's going to be people from Jersey are going to go and get free groceries, right? Like, it's going to be easy. Connecticut, like, it's going to be easy for people to go. The free groceries that are meant for the New York taxpayers who need help, there's going to be everybody who's coming in from all over. You know what I mean? So that would help a lot, I think. But also, I think the system is really broken, Republican versus Democrat, and they're probably going to abolish that system and go to, like, independents only, and then people vote for the independents, not just one party or another.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. So just first of all, in the state of Nevada, you do have to show ID to register. There's no way to register to vote here. No, almost every state requires voter ID to register. Also, in a study of 10 billion votes from George Bush Jr., they found only 40 irregular votes. In the study of the Heritage Foundation of, I can't remember how many years it is now, I think it's 10 years, they only found 67. So I'm saying, though, there isn't a need for it, because the data from the rightest of wing of organizations has showed it is not necessary. For some, well, yeah, but they did a study, right, and they found 67. So, okay, you guys have to let me finish speaking, okay? So, last thing, yeah. So there isn't actually a need for it. The problem is there are people that cannot necessarily easily get those things. So they can be very expensive. Getting your birth certificate can be very hard. They can be expensive to get. Hey, I'm sorry. You have to learn how to have a conversation without over talking to other people. If you want to ask a question and you want to hear what people have to say, you can't over talk other people. So all I'm trying to say is there's nothing that shows from Heritage Foundation and George Bush Jr. and everybody else's study that it's necessary. It is required in every state to register. Here we do signature verification, which is much harder to fake than an ID. I can fake an ID. Signature verification is very hard. Go to your bank and try to do your signature wrong. They will not help you, okay? I've had that happen. So anyway, not necessary, and it can be very difficult for some people to get those IDs.
So really quickly, we just saw a perfect example of what I'm talking about when we talk about communication, right? Because reasonable minds can disagree, right? You're saying voter ID is what we need. She's saying, totally hear you. Totally hear you. She's saying, probably not the highest priority, right? Now, both of those can work in their own constructs, right? And so being able to have that conversation where you have a point of view, she has a point of view, and trying to get to a point where you guys can agree on how to implement some of the similar cross paths across those aisles, that's what we need to be able to get back to. Now, a couple people were waiting, so I'm gonna get this gentleman right here.
I thought it was interesting, especially us talking about transparency. But in the time where we've probably been the most transparent, news is in everyone's face. I mean, it's easily accessible everywhere. We are the most divided. And it's just interesting that, like, transparency isn't the thing that I feel like would alleviate it. Even though it would help, obviously it's going to assist. More people believe their own side. I would think it's more to the incentive structure, like, because people can look at the same facts, but they're incentivized to believe different things about those facts. So, like, for instance, like, I've even thought about, I'm not a politician, but like legislating like facts and not legislating, or a good example is like during the debates they had the fact check thing, but like the last election they took it down or whatever. But like actually having incentive structures around candidates lying about their positions or actually like misusing their positions to punish them if they actually do it within the debate. Like we shouldn't do some soft thing like, oh, you lied, or here's a fact check. We need to actually, maybe not revoke people's like ability to run, but like we need to hold people to a certain standard, a legal standard. I know people are very disparaging about it, but an actual legal standard.
Wales just did that. It's coming into effect where they're gonna like kick politicians out of office if they lie. This is in Wales. So.
Yeah, and I could tell you as a lawyer, that becomes really difficult trying to legislate or write into law ethics and good behavior. I can tell you we spent an entire year on that in con law, and it was nasty. It was fascinating, but you know, and even what you were saying about this concept of transparency, I actually think both of what you all are saying can work. It's less of a no transparency and more of a we need something after the transparency to make sure that how it's being, you know, it gets back to the point of, can we agree on a set of information or how to receive certain things, or maybe it's an education problem, right? How are we thinking about certain issues such that there's some individuals where when they hear the word transparency, the response is, I don't know if I can trust these individuals with all the information because I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know if they're going to look at what I gave them that clearly shows that, for example, the sky is blue and decide, well, no, it's actually green. That's a different shade of blue. That's actually more of a green type of thing, which is a different sort of direction. But I think both those can work. A couple more.
So just quickly on voter ID, I think there's something that I can say that's very simple that I would hope everybody should be able to agree on. And that is, I don't personally think that voter ID is a priority. I don't think it's a problem today. But if a lot of people want it, I have absolutely no objection to requiring voter ID in order to vote. But there's one caveat, one proviso, and that is, in order to do that, we need to put a suitable ID in the hands of every eligible voter before requiring that it be used in order to vote. If we do that, I'm completely fine with it.
Access is important. Access is important. And that gets to your point about voter ID, but also gets to some of the other points that I know have been circulating around. And by the way, you're not the only individual who's supporting voter ID, so you are not on an island. But it gets to some of your other points around like, okay, how do we now make that accessible, right? If we can all agree and maybe get to a point where voter ID is required, making sure that it's accessible for everyone who's eligible to vote is that next part. It's that and that we talked about even with transparency. You can try from there or you can come up here. Totally up. Let's do it.
This is very brief, but you were asking like, what do I think or what do we think the problem is?
Yeah.
Like one thing I've observed, we're talking about TikTok, social media. Our information system has become bifurcated. I mean, and I don't have the answer, but if we could at least agree on what the facts are. Like my family is divided ideologically. We're like trains like this. It's not like we discuss a fact. We have different facts. We are not on the same plane. And I don't know how to solve that problem, but I see it as the problem.
Yeah, it's a great point. It reminds me just really briefly, one of my first classes that I took, the first introduction to law school was this contracts class. And my professor gets up there and he says, all right, well, gives us a hypothetical and says, well, was there a contract here? I kid you not, we spent 3 days talking about what is a contract, right? But that ends up being the happen is if we can muddy the waters with the facts, then we never get to this point of being able to have some meaningful discussions because we can't even agree on what we're disagreeing on, right? And I want to make sure, yeah, please.
So I was at a different conference and someone talking about this said, to move forward in this because of how divided everyone is, you have to just drop the whole past and not even bring up that conversation. But part of me screaming at that because of history. You want to go, this was hacked into here, so we don't do it again. But then we can't go who was in charge, who did it, who signed the copy. Do you know what I understand what they're trying to say, but I don't know how you just drop the history of it all. You learn from history. I don't know. But it was an interesting, I hadn't thought of it before. I'm kind of appalled at the idea, but I still don't know how to go forward because of alternative facts and facts.
So here's my opinion on sort of the vast majority of what we're talking about, especially when it comes to being able to do certain facts. And this is a bit of a hot take, but maybe not. I've always thought part of the problem has to do with how education is shifted, meaning our ability to think and reason has shifted significantly from when, for example, my parents were younger, when my grandparents were younger. And so what ends up happening, and what I think has really been happening is, as we're talking about the news cycle, as we're talking about how information is proliferated within the system, we continuously put Band-Aids on certain problems because we're trying to control for perception. And we used to not have to do that as much because there was a sort of belief and understanding that when you read something, you were going to go home and think about it and ask yourself this question of, okay, is this right? I'm reminded, again, another law school reference just because it's an incredibly traumatic time in my life. Who wants to go to law school? But one of the last things we had the privilege of having dinner with the late Justice Ginsburg. And for those of you guys that don't know, in law school, the way they teach you is through Supreme Court precedent. So you get a thick law book and you learn how to, quote unquote, think like a lawyer by reading cases, analyzing cases, and then making certain decisions about what was decided. Now, you want to get the good grades. So you want to understand key precedent and be able to argue the points. And one of the last things that we heard from Justice Ginsburg was she said, I hope when you guys are reading these cases, you're actually questioning us and asking yourselves the question of, was this the right decision? Because she would say, we don't always get it right. And sometimes you don't find out till down the line. One of my professors used to talk about upstream decisions have downstream consequences, and that's a big part of it. And I say all that to say maybe we're here in this current space because a lot of us, or a lot of society has sort of, I won't say lost, but maybe they've been injured in their ability to challenge some of the things that we're seeing and take it further and actually ask that fundamental question of, does this make sense? Is this right? What do I do about it? Or what can be done about it? And whose job is it, right? It's our job, right? It's one of my favorite things to talk to people about are really this responsibility. And I think when we talk about the differences between generations, some of the things that I've seen is, at least in my generation, part of what our problem's been is, we didn't have a great war. We didn't have, our civics lessons even were very different than, our parents and our grandparents. And a lot of times it felt like we were kind of inheriting, this country without being able to connect the dots about the responsibility that we have to uphold and protect it, to protect our institutions, to challenge our institutions, but to do it in a way that was about community, because it wasn't necessarily about whether I disagreed with you or disagreed with you. It was about we all have a role to play here, and we want to continue to be able to facilitate these systems that allow us to continue to challenge each other, because that's actually what makes us better, right? By you saying, well, Kendall, I actually don't know if the sky's blue. I'm using that argument just because it's ridiculous, but I don't know if the sky's blue. Now I'm going to go back and say, well, maybe it's not, right? Like maybe there's this weird shade of green that I'm just not really noticing, that type of thing. But by challenging, I forget the athletic reference, so I'm not going to go down that route. But there's something about being challenged that allows you to improve yourself in a way that says, well, maybe either what I believed before is no longer good reason. We have new facts. The world has changed. And we end up being able to propel our nation, our democracy forward by continuously being able to challenge each other and improve on our ideas. We have literally time for maybe one question, if that. Any other last comments? No?
You can revamp the system. If they said, tell us what you want, what you think should be done to fix the problem.
I'm gonna be such a lawyer. She asked, what would I do to fix the system? The lawyer answer would be, well, it depends. Right? No, I'm kidding. No, I would, assuming that I had all the time in the world and I had complete authority, my first instinct would be to go towards education, because at the end of the day, and I love what you said about transparency, our lives, a lot of these problems melt away, in my opinion, if I was able to trust that we were all operating under a similar frame of understanding, or a similar ability to be able to understand concepts, such that I can be radically transparent with you, because I know you're gonna go home and think about this. It might make sense, it's not, but you're gonna be responsible with the information and do the right thing, right? So I would focus the bulk of my time on teaching, on focusing resources into our systems to allow individuals in this country to be able to reason correctly and reason thoroughly and have that time. I would take, and I don't know the exact mechanism that I would use, but I would try to do whatever I could to take the pressure off of the everyday American time-wise, so that we had, or at least felt like we had, more time and more resources to be able to receive news, to be able to receive sound bites, political statements, strategies, and actually have the time to think about it, right? Not just say, well, this person's a Democrat, this individual's a Republican, I like what they're wearing, I don't like the fact that this individual did this. Actually have the time necessary to think and discuss and dissect and analyze what's being said. And I think starting from there, I think we would surprise ourselves with where we end up. And it's a, again, there's a lot of different ways to get to the same outcome. That's what I would focus on, because I think the ripple effect that would then occur would transcend what we're talking about with politics, would transcend what we're talking about with democracy. We would quite literally make ourselves a better country and better people and be better global citizens. But that's just me. That's all the time we have. My name's Kendall Spencer. Thanks for coming.